Hello, my friends. Thank you for being here. I just wanted to thank you and then also say that this is the second part of a two-part video series. I highly recommend you watch the first part before watching this one. And that's it. I hope you enjoy. Also, just so you guys are aware, this video is sponsored by Gatorade. Thank you, Gatorade, for sponsoring this video. Okay, so here it is. And it was... I'll just tell you what I'm saying. Again, I wasn't able to fully articulate it anyways, so you're not missing anything. The pen started getting low on battery after this trip. I kept the stream going in another stream, I think, and then like I kept thinking I was trying to get a good hit and I couldn't get a good hit, and then make sure the battery's charged, and I think I fucked the battery up using the wrong charger, like I said. But then I don't know, maybe not. Maybe I was just hitting it too hard, who knows. I do hit it pretty hard. I'm known across the nation for it. And weird things are happening at this point. Like I look frozen there. Oh no, I wasn't. But like the roof turned entirely one color, like this pastel color, and it's like a bumpy roof, but it looked like a flat, like turquoise roof. And then my walls turned all one color. I couldn't see anything on my walls. They were all pink, like the same thing, just a smooth pink. And there's this little computer in like the sort of the corner of my vision, and it was tracking my vision again. I've told you I've gotten that hallucination before, where I saw like crosshairs around my eyes, and every time I moved my eyes, these X and Y coordinates would change to like, they would represent like where my eyes were. So if I looked up, but like I couldn't read them or anything, it would just be like a hallucination, obviously, so it just looked like it, right? Although sometimes you can read the shit clearly, like sometimes the hallucinations are 100% lifelike in DMT. Like the walls were, and then... And during this trip, I learned again it was a simulation. I was 100% convinced, and I'm like, I got the answer, finally. Again, I was fooled. And I remember thinking specifically, wait till I tell my viewers it's a simulation. I know some people in the chat aren't going to be happy with that. I got to break the news to them, I felt like. I'm like, here we go. I was making all these links to my head. I'm like, because of that, and then this other trip I had, and that trip, and then there was this part and that part, and they're all lined up, and I'm like, it's a simulation. Oh my god. It was like a huge revelation. Alright, so let's skip ahead a bit here. I trip out to the music for a bit, and I don't say anything really. I told you guys a lot before about like, it all makes sense. Music is too loud. Yes, sorry. I haven't said anything really yet. But how do I fucking... At the beginning of the trip, I was moving my head around, doing weird shit like that. There's a reason for that. So tired.
tired. The more I think about this, the crazier it fucking sounds. I want to get it out now while it just happened, and I'll make a video about it reflecting on it. But okay. Immediately, like, my room was like cubified. Like, all the walls and the roof, everything was attached to, like, it was like connected to my head. It felt like I was in VR, like the tracking. And so, like, when I moved my head, the walls and the roof and everything would move in unison, and like everything became sectioned off. It still looks that way now, but like the roof became all one color, that wall became all one color, and that wall became all one color, and it was all like very, very smooth and like matte looking. It was tracking my head perfectly, which is bizarre. Oh fuck, it's all hazy now. What happened? Wait, let me think about this. It'll come back to me. Oh yes, the head movements. I was moving my head around and stuff at the beginning, and like closing my eyes and stuff. Every time I would close my eyes, I've told you about this little robot I've seen before, a little robot symbol that's sort of in several trips I've had. Every time
The video cut off as the stream went beyond 12 hours and I had DVR on, which is a feature that allows viewers to rewind during the stream. But if you have that on, YouTube will cut off the upload at 12 hours after you're done streaming. And so that's what happened. It's unfortunate, but it's my own fault. I should have known that. So it doesn't matter. I was almost finished anyways, actually. So I will just explain the rest, and then I will explain to you my understanding of simulation theory and how it may or may not relate to DMT.
Okay, that trip was very weird.
And not much has come to me since it happened, but I have a few insights. And so, yeah, the walls went all one color, like this orangey pink color, and then the roof was like turquoise blue, or it was the other way around, I think, or I don't quite remember. And there was this like computer in that corner of my room, and it was like every time I closed my eyes, it would like, I saw this little symbol, this little wag finger symbol, which I think I've talked about before. I've seen that before, and I never really quite understood it, but I think I'm starting to understand what that is. It's like the simulation, the computer was trying to like improve my trip or learn from me and see what I like and what I don't like about trips and reality in general. And it was like trying to like improve reality. And I've always had this theory that a simulation, if we are in a simulation, the purpose of it is to hopefully generate ideas from like the organisms that grow in the simulation. You know, they can come up with ideas like we're an AI, essentially self-learning AI, and perhaps they can learn something from us. And that's like a loose theory I hold among many. And so that may have seeped into the trip or something, because I felt like the computer was trying to like tell me, like, it knew I didn't like closing my eyes during trips because my closed eye hallucinations aren't that good. And so every time I would close my eyes, it would do this. I saw a little symbol like this. And I've seen that symbol before in many trips. And I would see a little logo of the robot too. And I sensed that was the computer. I've seen the robot before in many trips too. And it's always the same little logo. And it's hard to describe what it looks like, but like, it's weird, that little finger wag. Every time I close my eyes, it's like, you don't need to do that. And it was learning, like, it was telling me, we're trying to improve your trips, make your trips like how you like them. And it's like, you gotta tell us what you like, you gotta tell us what you like and stuff. It was bizarre. And then during that trip, there was some other things that happened that, again, made perfect sense at the time. And when I went to go describe them, they stopped making sense almost at the exact same moment. It's like, I understand, then I go to speak, I don't understand. And so now we're going to get into what I think about simulation theory. I think it's, whether you believe it or not, a fascinating idea. And I think people get the wrong idea of what it means, or they don't think too deeply about it because they brush it off right away because they have a misunderstanding of the basic concept behind it. And there's lots of ways to approach the idea of simulation theory. And there's generally a couple people when it comes to like simulation theory. If they don't believe it, that either don't like the idea because it's a cold mechanical idea to them and maybe they're religious, or it conflicts with their beliefs, or there's people who just totally misunderstand the idea and they don't see any merit in it at all. Like, I prefer the first person, because if they're worried about it, it might be logical enough to see that it's somewhat plausible theory, and so the second person just has taken no time to understand it at all, and they're like, you think we live in a video game? Well, no, I never said that at all. Of anything, simulation theory suggests that video games are more like life. It's more the other way around. This is sort of my own understanding from it. Like a lot of things, I'd like to form my own understanding. Unless it's like a hard science or something, then obviously you gotta, like, it's an objective thing. You gotta learn it the way it's taught. But for loose theories like this, like, I don't know, I hear bits and pieces of it, and then usually it's some of my own experiences that will like bolster my beliefs in it. And so I started having simulation theory. By the way, I was into simulation theory before I ever smoked DMT. Not long before, but the same year I think I tried DMT, which is 2019, I believe. Not long ago, really. And during that year is when I like saw some videos on simulation theory. I was interested in it for quite a while, but I never knew much about it or the ideas behind it. But it was like explained basically one way pretty well, and then I sort of like paraphrased it into my own sort of core breakdown of simulation theory. So there's a couple ideas that if you hold them both in your head as plausible ideas, then to me that suggests that a simulation is plausible as well. So the two ideas are, the first one is that there are other civilizations in the universe that are far more advanced than us. There might not be, but I think it's definitely plausible that there are, and personally I think probably likely, but who's to say? And the reason for that is just like the abundance of planets, and I think recently they did like a projection that can predict how many habitable planets there are in a certain zone, and then how many civilizations there might be. And this recent one predicted there might be like 34, I think, in the Milky Way. Who knows? It's just a projection, right? But like, I think, and that's just one galaxy. We live in one galaxy, and there's like how many of those. So I think there's definitely other civilizations out there that are more smart than us. And if you think about it, we only really got intelligence since the Industrial Revolution in terms of technology. And so like that just happened. So in terms of tech, I think we're very, very young. We're probably stupid on the totem pole. So there's probably civilizations, maybe their Industrial Revolution happened 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, 1,000,000 years ago. Think about that shit. They would be so much more advanced than us. And okay, that's idea one. If you can think that that's possible, and then also hold this idea in your head. Idea two is that at the rate we're growing technologically, the possibility that we can have the processing power to simulate a universe-sized simulation with the visual fidelity of real life one day will be possible. In the distant future, obviously, a lot think that is going to be inevitable, basically. And so that's a ton of computing power, obviously. We can barely like simulate a VR chat, in like not nowhere near a real life quality, but just the advancements. Think of in 1990 video games and think of now. That was 30 years. So think of like 100 years, what it'll be like. It'll be exponential growth too. So the idea that we can do that, to me, is an absolute no like inevitability to me. But if you can at least hold that idea as plausible, and that it's plausible there are far more advanced civilizations than us, then it would also be plausible, right, that there are civilizations out there that can create a simulation. And if that's plausible, then it's plausible we are in a simulation. And if they have total control over it, they could program in things that would make it so we can't find out we're in a simulation. Because that would kind of ruin the whole thing, right? Or it could potentially. I could see why they might do that. This all sounds silly to talk about, but like then people talk about like religion and like religion creation stories. Like it's not as silly. I'm saying none of it is silly. I think, speculating on the nature of our existence is anything but silly. It's like a human thing to do. And I think simulation theory, is the only real theory or idea around the nature of our existence that is plausible in a scientific way. There's an actual outline for how it can be true. And after that trip I had, like I was looking around and like I had the idea in my head that we were in a simulation, and I know like whatever's in your head will greatly influence what you see and whatnot. So I'm not saying like I saw through the simulation or anything, but I had hallucinations like I was. And my arm turned entirely white. I'm very pale, obviously, and we were talking about me being pale earlier, but during the trip I looked over at my arm and it was completely white. Not like it looked very pale. Like it looked like the texture file for my skin was missing or something. It was just like white, like alpha. It was like as white as like my wall, like my painted wall. And so that was really bizarre and simulation glitchy to me. It felt like there was a glitch. And then, when my hand came back and stuff, I could see my skin. It was a graphical hand that looked like it was being rendered by a graphics card. And like my knuckles, like for one of my fingers was like glitching out, and the tip of my finger was like moving sideways, and I could see like static around it, like it was having trouble like there's a trouble in the connection or something, or like the GPU for the universe was like struggling. And then I had this idea at that moment that like maybe DMT sort of fucks with the connection between our consciousness and the simulation. Maybe DMT interferes with that, and it sort of lets us see through it a bit. And that's just a theory, a speculation, And then that got me thinking about like consciousness. There would have to be an interference between what two things? So that got me thinking like there's the simulation being interfered with via us, the observer. There's an interference between that thing, which would suggest that there is a consciousness. We're a player in this simulation. We're not part of the simulation, which means that the movie Vanilla Sky is pretty on point. I'm just kidding, but have you seen that movie? That's a great, great film, by the way. At the time when it came out, I don't know, it got panned for some reason by critics, but it's an amazing film. It talks about like simulation theory, sort of. Like, I don't want to ruin it for you, but it's a very cool movie. Check it out. But it's totally possible. Like, at the rate like graphics are improving, like, who knows if these are even good graphics, These could be graphics. Like, the real world could look totally, completely different. This could just be, like, the best they got right now. And we only think it looks real because it's all we've seen. And so the idea that there's an interference, like, it couldn't fully render my hand properly. And, like, lends the idea that there's a consciousness because there was interference. And there must be a connection. And so, like, maybe we're players. Like, maybe we're sitting in a room like the Matrix. Or maybe you can insert yourself into these simulations. And maybe they could simulate time and stuff to make it seem like we're in here for a long time, but maybe we're not. maybe we're just in here for like a day. And maybe you get to pick your character. Maybe I made Dustin. I set like the cool attribute to like 10. Responsibility and adult skills to like 1. I had to sacrifice something. I min-maxed him. I didn't put it all average. That's a boring build. And so, yeah, do I believe in simulation theory? I don't believe in any one theory, really. I think I'm pretty agnostic in that regard. But I do think it's very plausible, and I think if I had to choose a theory to believe in, if I had to put a wager on it, I would say that simulation theory is really the only thing that there is to bet on. I mean, unless you're religious. And simulation isn't really a scientific theory. It's more like a philosophy, really. It's more like a philosophical idea. And there might be some science in it too. There might be some scientific work being done on it and stuff too. I'm not sure, but I think it's the only real like idea that I think is possible. All the other ideas I've had about the nature of our existence are very spiritual in nature, like the idea of a collective conscience and stuff like that. I've had like moments of what I felt like were clarity, where I could see that being true, and moments in my life where I almost was convinced that was the truth. And I go back and forth on ideas like that. But none of those ideas were like, had scientific backing behind them or could make sense in this world as it is. Simulation theory, on the other hand, isn't like that. And I think that's pretty significant. And I think that the afterlife or the real world or whatever, or anything like that, and this world are one in the same. So another couple of ideas that I forgot to mention. When I was saying that there was times where I believed in like a collective conscience idea, that we all return to the same entity when we die and we're redistributed into the world, something loosely like that. If the simulation theory is true, then they could simulate in an afterlife for us within the simulation. You know what I'm saying? So like the collective conscience idea may still be a thing, you know, and then it could still also be a simulation. That could be simulated. The collective conscience could be simulated. You know what I'm saying? And then another thing I just wanted to mention about reality and the afterlife potentially being one and the same. So that idea that I just said would lend to this idea, because they're both within the simulation, and that's our reality basically. So that's another thing. And then if like virtual reality and real life are made of the same things in this universe, right? Like a digital projection is made of what? It's made of like glass and electrons and protons and neutrons and atoms and elements, and it's comprised of all the same things that make up organic life. Like we're made of carbon and, you know, the same elements that our VR headsets are made of. So it's all the same building blocks. And so I think video games and life are kind of the same. So yeah, I think life's a video game, but it's more like the other way around. Video games are more like life. It's not like everything's fake. It's more like everything is real, you know, including video games. Like this one quote I've heard before that I like, it's like fake lemons are still real fake lemons. You know what I'm saying? Okay, back to the video. You know, I think the answer to everything could be something that is possible in this world, because we're on trajectory to be able to create a simulation like the one we are possibly in. And then that idea sort of lends to all sorts of interesting like philosophical ideas that I won't like delve into really, but like it lends to like maybe we're just constantly born and reborn into new simulations. Maybe it's a never-ending chain and none of us like know like our creator, and we just But then we could be ended at any point too, I guess, right? But who knows? Maybe we can't. Maybe we're in a, I don't know. And see, my understanding really falls apart there. Or I never had any understanding. It's all speculation, obviously. But you can see that the idea that simulation theory is just like, you think we're in a video game is totally such a mischaracterization of the belief, and it just sort of like minimizes, like, it makes me sound like an idiot if that, like, no, it's much more complicated than that. It's like a very, like, almost spiritual idea. It is a spiritual idea. If that is the answer, then that means video games are a spiritual thing, or like like virtual reality and stuff like that is the path to like our understanding of the nature of our existence. And at the end of the day, simulation theory still doesn't answer where did it all begin. It doesn't even attempt to answer that at all. You know, it can't. Nothing really has ever been able to explain that with any sort of scientific in any sort of scientific way. You know, we can't even like begin to scratch the surface of how that question. And so I'm not saying simulation theory is the end all and be all and will answer all of our questions. I'm just saying it might answer how humans came into existence, or this galaxy, or this universe, which might be a small fragment of the real answer and of everything as a whole. And it's just, there's so much to think about with simulation theory. It like lends to all sorts of different paths you can take mentally. Like, it just makes you think. It's a very interesting thing when you think about it. And then, okay, what's really cool recently is I just got a VR headset, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. And what's interesting with this, which I haven't tried one in like a few years, and they've like came quite a long way even since then. And so like, there's little tiny sensors on the outside, and they're used to like track objects and like your boundary and stuff, so you don't bump into shit. And they do that with actually a really small camera. It's a very, very low fidelity camera. It's black and white. It's very grainy. It's like low frames per second and stuff like that. All it needs to do is sense that the object's there. But you can actually tap the side of your headset and tap into that camera, and it will show the camera to you. And so basically what you're seeing in the headset is what you would see without the headset on, except it's all being rendered through the headset in this like low quality camera. So you put it on, basically it's like it downgrades the world to like this grainy black and white photo. And it's a weird sort of experience at first. It's just like life, but like a black and white grainy movie sort of. It's trippy. It feels like you're in a virtual reality world, except it's your own world. And it's like your depth perception is the exact same. You can pick objects up, you know, you can drink, you can open cans and everything. You can see, you can walk around and everything. And it's just really bizarre. That got me thinking that our brain is essentially like a VR headset. If you think about it, like it works the same way. Our brain and our eyes are taking in information. Our brain is using electrical impulses and signals to generate an image for us. That's exactly what the VR headset is doing. It's taking in visual information and it is rendering it to be seen. And that's bizarre. It just gets you thinking that like the idea of our bodies being like basically a tool to connect our consciousness and this world is not totally bizarre. And that's bizarre.
Bizarre.
Is not totally bizarre. Hey, this is Junk Bond Trader, and I drink Gatorade. Gatorade. Fuck. And we're in the very, very infancy of AI and virtual reality and all that. And the implications of AI are that too are obviously huge, but VR is also really big. Like, it's gotten way better in the last like few years. It's always getting better. And then like I started thinking like pretty soon I'm sure we'll be able to do live streams where like we can all be in a room together. Once it gets like so everyone can afford it, you know, then we can all like chill in a room in a live stream instead of like us watching the screens from different areas. We can all be in the same room. There could be like a big screen and I can like direct the screen from like a stage or some shit, you know? That would be like next level streaming. And that, I think, at the rate it's going, like 10 years away from that doesn't seem out of the question for me. And given the exponential growth factor, it could be even sooner, you know, who knows? It could be never. Maybe the world will end next year, you know, who knows? But yeah, I think VR, I think a lot of people don't realize like how great it is right now. Like the things you can do with it are amazing. Like I didn't realize like the idea that you can put up like 6 screens and just utilize empty space in the air and duplicate your TV basically. That's pretty crazy. Imagine you had the processing power where you can like power each of those like its own VR. You could like, that's, you know, you can already run browsers on each screen, have tabs up on each one. Instead of flipping through tabs, you can just look over at that one. Keyboard integration isn't great right now, but it's getting better. They just like launched ones where you could see your keyboard and your hands. You can see your hands in VR too, which is cool. Like it tracks your fingers perfectly. And it's just like, it's so interesting to me. It feels that the apps right now are good, but like, and fun and stuff, but like it feels like it's on the verge of like a big leap in like, I think some amazing VR apps are going to come out in the next few years. Anyways, do I believe in simulation theory? If I had to put my money on it, no, but I would say that I would bet that the nature of our existence has something to do with computer program in the future of computer programming. I think it has to do with a technology that can be invented by us one day. Not fully, but I'm leaning more towards that than anything else for sure. And maybe reality is always the same for everyone. Maybe our creators, the reality is the exact same. And they're just more advanced or something like that. Who knows? And if you think about it, like if once simulation is started, like our Milky Way, our universe or whatever, think of all the simulations that might happen from us, creating worlds within worlds within worlds that would branch out like so quickly. And like a million years of that, there'd be like infinite numbers of civilizations and simulations and all the Asians. And as to whether I believe like what I was seeing, like the robot or that computer was actually part of the simulation or actually showing me like something real, or linked to some actual real simulation. At the time of those trips and after the trips for a little bit, at one point I was certain. Then shortly after I started doubting it. And then once I came back down to baseline, basically I'm back at where I was before. No, I don't think that's true. And even though I was having those revelations during the trip where I'm like, oh my God, this means that and that means that, then it's 100% simulation. I think, I don't know what exactly I'm thinking or seeing during those moments. And a lot of people have these like revelations on like psychedelics and then later they can't explain it. It's like a common thing. And I think usually that happens during very intense trips. And I think generally what that is the revelations we're having, the things we're thinking about during those moments is probably like utter nonsense. It's probably meaningless stuff. And it seems like it makes sense at the time. And then when you come down, you're like, what was I thinking again? And you can't remember it because it was meaningless nonsense. But all you can remember is that it made sense to you at the time. But, you know, you're out of it on some psychedelic. So that's sort of what I think is happening. That's sort of what I think is happening. Because you ever get it when you're falling asleep and you're thinking about stuff, and then when you get really tired right before you fall asleep, your thoughts sort of meander into like meaningless nonsense, and you'll be thinking about like the weirdest stuff that makes no sense whatsoever, but you'll just be going along with it, and then you'll like maybe wake up again, and it's hard to forget or remember what you were thinking about, but you remember it made no sense. Sometimes you remember it. It'll be something about like something totally meaningless, like you're eating an apple on like, you know, Jupiter or something. Or no, not even like that makes sense in a way, like that's it'll be more like shoes, like grandma, like fuck, never mind. It'll just make like no sense. You'll be thinking about like shoelaces like on a donkey, like upside down donkeys, like in Nepal or something. You'll be like, oh yeah, upside down donkeys in Nepal with shoelaces on them. And you'll be like, right. And then you'll wake up and you'll be like, wait, upside down donkeys with shoelaces on them in Nepal? Or something like that. I know, but yeah, that's sort of, it's either that or like it's programmed into the simulation. If the simulation's real, then it's like a function of the simulation, like that we're not designed to figure it out, so that we keep the integrity of the simulation going. Because if we found out this was all a simulation or something, then like it would ruin the purpose of whatever the simulation is. We could like overthrow it, or, you know, whatever. Maybe people die young when they start figuring this shit out. Maybe like if I die next week, it's a simulation. Everybody know this. They're pulling me out. I'm too smart. I'm figuring it out. And if you think about it, feelings are more memorable than specific events. Like, I don't remember what exactly happened. Like, I remember snippets from when I went through my first breakup. You know, I don't remember exactly the details of what happened, but I remember feeling really awful. I remember the way it felt. So I don't know if that means anything really, but that could be the same thing with like trips where like you forget the events, but like you're not going to forget like how you felt like 2 seconds ago. Even like when you have a nightmare but you don't remember what happened, sometimes you wake up terrified, or sometimes you wake up or like, oh, I just had the best dream, but like what was it about? I forget, you know. So that's just something else to think about, to chew on. All hallucinations are just figments of our imagination. They're generated from the ideas and thoughts that we already have in our head, sort of like dreams. And that's sort of where that's what I believe. That's what I believe generally. Like, I think if simulation's a real thing, then there's not necessarily a link between it and psychedelics. Even if like my vision, like my hallucinations are all bullshit, like, which I think they are, they're just hallucinations. That doesn't mean I don't think simulation theory is real, just because I theorize that there's a link between the two and DMT might interfere with that link, you know. So there's different ideas I got here. Some of them work together, some don't, and so I'm just speculating, of course, but yeah, simulation theory, I think I believe in a lot more than I believe in a link between DMT and some sort of other world. That's a little far-fetched to me, but then again, if the simulation theory is real, then like nothing is far-fetched, because they can just make it whatever they want, right? If they have the technology to do that, they can just make it whatever the fuck they want. So nothing is out of the realm of possibility. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe their universe, maybe they all died from some disease and their servers are just still running, and maybe they'll fail one day and that'll be the end of the universe. I don't know. That's grim. Okay. I love you guys so much. I hope that sort of clarifies everything. My beliefs about simulation theory. I know like my understanding of it isn't very deep, and it's sort of like based on my own experiences and understanding of it all. So I'm not claiming to be like some genius on simulation theory. There are some like real intense thinkers on the subject that, you know, have probably obviously taken it way deeper than I have or can probably. So I just like to think about it, and it's Yeah, I think it gets a bad rap. All right, that's it. I love you guys so much, and I hope you have a wonderful life and day and week and decade and all the time frames. It won't always be good, but we don't have to think about that. I hope it'll be good. Okay, goodbye. Goodbye. More to come. Always more to come. Always more to come. Goodbye.